deep within the fabric of every human being lies an astonishing 16 billion base pairs of DNA, a sprawling code that doesn't just define our physical traits but holds the keys to our most profound biological secrets, including some of the darkest and most twisted chapters of our past. According to a handful of bold researchers, this genetic ledger whispers of a time when the world was steeped in unrelenting bloodshed, a period so savage that its echoes reverberate through our bodies even now. They've dubbed it humanity's first global conflict, a sprawling, violent upheaval during the late Neolithic period that stretched across Europe, Asia, the Middle East, and beyond, rendering violence a near universal experience and escape an impossible dream. How did they uncover this? By peering into the very essence of our genomes. Scientists analyzing the DNA of modern populations stumbled upon something startling: a genetic bottleneck, a drastic narrowing of diversity etched into our history just a few thousand years ago. A bottleneck occurs when a population suffers a catastrophic drop in numbers, leaving fewer individuals to pass on their genes. It's not an uncommon phenomenon in nature. Humans have weathered several, including a brutal one roughly 900 years ago, likely triggered by Mother Nature's wrath, perhaps a volcanic eruption or climate shift. But this bottleneck? It's different. It's far more recent, dating to the late Neolithic, around 7,000 to 4,000 years ago. And the evidence suggests it wasn't nature's doing, it was ours. Here's where it gets eerie. This bottleneck didn't strike evenly. It hit the Y-chromosome, the genetic marker passed solely from father to son with devastating force. Researchers estimate that male genetic diversity plummeted by as much as 95% across regions like Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Imagine the scale. In these areas, only 1 in 20 men might have survived whatever calamity unfolded. Meanwhile, mitochondrial DNA, inherited through mothers, showed no comparable collapse. Picture a world where women outnumbered men 17 to 1. Something targeted men specifically, culling them in droves while leaving women largely unscathed. But what could cause such a gender-skewed catastrophe? The leading theory is violence, unprecedented, unrelenting violence. Natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, or volcanic eruptions would have killed indiscriminately, flattening genetic diversity across both sexes. This was no random act of nature. It was deliberate, human-driven destruction. The data paints a picture of a conflict so lethal it makes even the bloodiest chapters of recorded history like World War I or II look tame by comparison. To replicate this scale today, with our global population of roughly 8 billion, you'd need to wipe out approximately 3.9 billion men, leaving just 200 million standing. That's a slaughter beyond imagination, a purge that reshaped humanity's genetic legacy. Skeptics might ask, if this happened, where's the proof beyond DNA? The answer lies in the ground bones don't lie. Archaeologists have unearthed over 250 sites across Europe alone, dated to the late Neolithic, where violent deaths are unmistakable. These aren't isolated incidents. They're a pattern. Skeletons from this era, spanning roughly 7,000 to 4,000 years ago, are riddled with evidence of brutality: fractured skulls, pierced bones, severed limbs. One study examined 2,300 early farmers and found that over 10% bore marks of weapon injuries, likely from raiding parties clashing over crops, livestock, or territory. Another analysis, focused on 138 individuals from Spain, revealed that 23% showed signs of aggressive trauma. Men bore the brunt, 97% of unhealed wounds, and 81% of healed ones were found on adult and adolescent males, suggesting that surviving one attack often meant facing another. Life back then was a gauntlet of violence, especially for men. The evidence grows darker still when you zoom in on specific sites. Take the Talheim death pit in Germany, dated to around 5000 BC. Here, archaeologists uncovered the remains of 34 individuals, 16 children, 9 adult men, and 7 older women brutally slain. None bore defensive wounds. A chilling clue they were fleeing, not fighting, when the end came. The killing blows fell into 3 categories: strikes from the sharp edge of an adze-like tool, blunt force trauma from the same weapon's dull side, and, in 3 cases, arrow wounds. Most blows targeted the head. 30 of the 34 skulls showed lethal cranial injuries, some layered atop already fatal wounds. Young women were conspicuously absent, a recurring theme at Neolithic massacre sites. The theory? They were taken as trophies, kidnapped by the victors, while the rest were left to rot. Not far away, in Austria, the Schlitz massacre, also around 5000 BC, offers an even grimmer tableau. Here, 200 victims were carelessly dumped into a mass grave after a raid on their settlement. Like Talheim, young women were scarce among the dead, but the brutality escalated. Severed limbs and detached skulls littered the site, hinting at torture or ritual dismemberment. Some attackers may have had traditions of mutilation, perhaps, as a display of dominance or a cultural practice. In Asia, for instance, headhunting was a known custom during this period, and evidence of similar behaviors crops up across Neolithic sites. Then there's Herxheim, Germany's most haunting discovery, dated between 5304 and 950 BC. This wasn't a ravaged settlement, it was the lair of the ravagers. Over 1,000 victims, possibly as many as 1,500, filled 80 pits surrounding a 15-acre village. The scale is staggering. Adjusted for Neolithic population sizes, it's as if a modern city built a mass grave for 800 corpses just outside its walls. Nearly every body was processed methodically, skulls cleaved down the middle, bones crushed for marrow extraction, some even showing signs of being spit roasted. Researchers suspect this was the work of a skull cult, with a particular fondness for brains and tongues. Bite marks on hand bones and missing spongy elements suggest cannibalism wasn't just incidental, it was deliberate, with preferred cuts of human flesh. Bones were repurposed into cups, tools, or decorations, some mounted on spikes at the village entrance. Who were these killers? A small group, likely fewer than 50 people, yet they waged war across a 300-mile radius, targeting diverse victims: farmers, hunter-gatherers, mountain dwellers, and lowlanders. Isotope analysis of the remains shows this wasn't a local feud. It was a campaign of conquest requiring tactics and logistics remarkable for the time. Their reign was brief. Evidence suggests the settlement was abandoned within 50 years of the massacres. Did another group exact revenge? Did their brutality doom them? The mystery lingers. So, what sparked this carnage? Many point to the Neolithic Revolution, a seismic shift when humans traded nomadic hunting for settled farming. Populations swelled, villages rose, and weapons evolved. Axes, spears, bows, and clubs became deadlier and more accessible. Suddenly, there was something worth fighting for. Loot in the form of food, land, and women, all concentrated in one place. Settlements meant to foster progress also bred conflict. Neighbors weren't just rivals, they were existential threats. Fortifications like palisades, found at sites like Talheim and Schlitz, underscore the paranoia of the age. Walling yourself off was a matter of survival. Some researchers propose a social twist. As societies reorganized into patrilineal clans, men's Y-chromosomes became uniquely vulnerable. These tight-knit male lineages, wary of outsiders, clashed fiercely, wiping out entire paternal lines in battle. Women, less restricted, maintained broader genetic continuity. Others argue for a peaceful explanation: lineage fission, where clans split naturally over time, and some male lines faded due to environmental pressures or reproductive luck. The truth might lie in a mix of both: violence thinning the ranks, followed by gradual attrition. The aftermath? Male genetic diversity still hasn't fully rebounded in some populations. Yet, humanity adapted. Lifespans, a meager 20-33 years in the Neolithic, have tripled. Conflicts grew deadlier with technology, but their frequency dropped. Since World War I, new wars have trended downward, a blip of peace in our long, bloody saga. We're not dodging skull cults or headhunters anymore, and that's progress. Still, our DNA carries the scars of a time when we turned on ourselves, a humbling reminder of how far we've come and how fragile it all remains.